Retiring with a large RRSP is a pretty good problem to have, but without proper planning, you'll end up paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in unnecessary taxes. So in this video, we'll walk through a real-life case study of a 60-year-old couple with $1.75 million in their RRSPs, showing how a poor drawdown strategy can lead to a massive tax bill, and the steps you can take to avoid making these same mistakes. So here we have John and Andrea YouTube, a 60-year-old couple. They want to see life expectancy or projections till age 95. We have inflation at 2.5%. Now, as far as their incomes, they are retiring, so there's nothing here. When we look at the asset base, this is where they built up a nice RSP. So John invested in some good investments and his RSP has ballooned up to $1.5 million. Now let me just say, this is not normal. Most Canadians do not have $1.5 million in their RSP. This is a great problem to have, and it can be that. It can be a problem, and that's the whole point of this video if you don't treat it properly and draw it down properly. Again, we all wish we had $1.5 million. Like, Adam, that's a great problem to have, and I totally agree. But for people that have these higher RSPs, you need to know how to treat it properly. I think the other side of the coin here is a lot of people I talk to say, RSPs don't make sense. Like, I don't want to have too much RSPs when I hit retirement. I'm going to stop contributing to them. I'm going to start investing in a TFSA or other. I don't want to have an RSP that's worth $800,000, $1 million, $1.5 million. So hopefully this video will also show you that, no, you can actually have a really nice size RSP and still draw it out in a very low tax rate. So John again has a $1.5 million RSP and $125,000 in a TFSA account. For Andrea, she has some RSP, but not that much. She didn't work her career as much and built up a $250,000 RSP and then $125,000 in the TFSA. Now, when it comes to retirement income needs, they've noted to us that they need about $8,000 per month in their go-go phase, $7,000 in their slow-go, and $6,000 in their no-go. And we know they're going to have more than that. And so we're going to walk through what does this plan look like, taxes, cash flow, all that. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to walk you through what the income they need looks like. And because they have extra money, how do we deal with that? How does that actually incorporate into the standard plan and the tax planning and the cash flow planning? How does this all actually come together? So scenario one here is just data dump into the system, their assets, liabilities, everything they have going on in their financial world, just to get a starting point. And unfortunately, this is the plan that a lot of you are getting from your banks or financial institutions. It's a data dump into software, hit generate and say, here you go. And on the surface, this looks great. The client has $104,551. It's more than they ever need or will spend. They could walk away with this and say, hey, I'm good to retire. I have a plan. The reality is you're paying way too much taxes and you're not optimizing. So again, this is their starting point. I want to highlight this number, 104,551. Now, one of the key issues with a plan like this, you can see in the middle of the RSP, it stays well north of $1 million, even into their late 80s. At 90 years old, there's still $750,000 sitting in the RSP, which is a huge, huge tax issue. In fact, if you look over on the right-hand side, tax on estate, you can see it starts at over $1 million in tax and it's still over $500,000 into their late 80s. I don't think many of you want to be paying that amount of tax to CRA when you hit life expectancy. So the first step we want to take is, because Andrea is not working from 60 to 65, neither is John, but John can't split his RRSP income in those years with Andrea, meaning that we need to drive up more income for Andrea or else she's going to pay 0% tax, which sounds great on the surface, but it doesn't actually help them short or long term in income, after tax income in their pocket. So you can see here, we've more aggressively about $40,000 per year drawn down on her RSP, then scaled it back to about $12,000. Now what we're looking at here is this effective or average tax rate. You can see it's very, very level throughout her retirement. And you can see if we scroll to the left under transfers, under income splitting or pension splitting, you can see at age 65, John's able to share some of his RRSP income with Andrea. But until that date, he's not able to. So we need to draw down hers more aggressively. Now I want to raise a very, very key point here. If you have lopsided assets, if you're married to common law, if you have lopsided assets and you retire pre-65 and all of your assets or income will be RSP, you want to make sure you're building up an RSP for the lower income or the person that has less assets. So it could be an RSP or it could be a spousal RSP. The reality is for John and Andrea has $250,000 in her RSP that we can draw down in that first 5 years of retirement. But if the whole $1.75 million was in John's RSP and Andrea didn't have any, all of this income would be taxed in his hands for the first 5 years until we could income split it. And so if you have one high income earner and you're saving primarily in their accounts and you plan to retire before age 65, you need to make sure you do some tax planning years before you retire. Because again, if Andrea had zero in her RSP, their overall taxes would be much higher because for the first 5 years of their retirement, all of the taxable income would be in John's hands, which is obviously not a great situation to be in. In this case, I haven't done any tax planning around John's RSP, but you can also see the total income. Just by that little bit of planning for Andrea, we've driven up the income to $105,071. So we've increased their after-tax in their pocket, inflation-adjusted income in their pocket. So let's actually play around with John's RSP to see if we can drive the income up a little bit and also decrease the tax bill. One thing we typically look at, and what I encourage all of you to look at before you do an RSP meltdown, is does it make sense to delay your CPP? Now with John and Andrea retiring at 60, it's very enticing to take the CPP early because you have more non-contributory years. But we can see here by delaying CPP for both John and Andrea, their income was just a hair over $105,000. We're now at $107,482, and that's without any tax planning for John. So just by delaying the Canadian pension plan for both John and Andrea, it adds close to $2,500 after tax, adjusted to inflation, money in their pocket. That's a drastic difference just by delaying CPP. And by delaying that CPP, we're going to have more years to draw down John's RSP, which I'll show you now. So for John, we've started to more aggressively draw down his RSP. So for the first 5 years, it's $60,000. Because remember, we're drawing more money out of Andrea. Now, because we've made changes to John and taken out a different amount, we've actually adjusted Andrea's too. And this is where kind of the back and forth when we're building out a plan takes a lot of time, because when we adjust one, we might need to adjust another and make sure everything levels out over time. So again, her RSP, we're drawing out now about $55,000 per year down to age 65 when they're going to be more income splitting. On John's side, for the first 5 years, we're drawing out $60,000, and then we're ramping it up to $125,000. Now remember that a lot of that can be split with Andrea, and you can see here $60,300 at age 65 is income split with Andrea. So again, we're keeping their overall average tax rate quite low. $125,000, then at 70 when Canadian pension plan starts, we've scaled that back to $100,000. We've kept their average tax rate right in that 14-15%. So much better average tax rate. Now, let's take a look at the income, taxes, all of that, the things that really matter. Like, does planning like this really make a difference? And we can see their after-tax income has now increased again, $107,622. Now let's take a quick look at a comparison. So retirement spending, how much did they have on an annual basis after tax in their pocket? What we started with, which again is a lot of your plans coming out of the banks or financial institutions that a lot of you are working with, was $104,551. And again, it met their income needs. So a lot of people look at that and say, yeah, this works. I got enough money, I can retire, perfect. But with some proper RSP meltdown, tax planning, looking at CPP timing, just overall efficiency within the plan. Again, we're not adding more assets in the plan. We're just taking what they've built up and using it better. We've been able to increase their income by $3,000 in today's dollars after tax in their pocket. If we look at their lifetime expenses, so from age 60 all the way up to age 95, how much more income have they collected in their pocket after tax because of this planning? You can see it's $175,972 in their pocket that they will collect. And in all of this, not only have we given them more money, but we've also reduced their tax bill from $899,000 through retirement down to $742. So a savings of $156,000 in taxes. So there you have it. They have $107,000 after tax, but remember, they don't need that much. They only needed about 96 and 84,000 a year, then 72,000 a year. Again, $8, $7, $6,000 on a monthly basis. So what does that look like? Does the tax planning change if you're not spending all your money? And so I want to show that here in a second, but I'll take it a level further. If you have extra money, what did you do with that? How do you pass that on to the next generation or give it away, or what do you want to do with it? Maybe they want to spend more. In this case, they didn't. Maybe for you though, hey, I have more money, I'll spend it. Perfect. Have your planner map that out, figure out how do all the moving pieces work for you. So here we have the final plan for John and Andrea. You can see 96,000 after tax in the go-go phase, drops to 84,000 in the slow-go phase, and then 72 in the no-go phase. So very nice income. Now we can see when you look under financial assets, all types, at age 95, they still have $2.6 million left. Now, again, there's a little bit of non-reg account because they've maxed out their TFSA account, but the majority of that is in their TFSA account, $2.5 million. If we scale that back to life expectancy, about age 88, 89, again, they have everything left in their TFSA account, about $1.8 million, bit in the non-reg because, again, they've maxed out the TFSA. So could they give money earlier? And that was their question to us. So even though they're spending less, you can see here the RSP drawdown strategy for John has not changed. It's $60,000, it's $125,000, and it's $100,000. Nothing's changed there. All we're doing is taking that extra money and reinvesting it elsewhere. Now, again, you can see here in the TFSA account, not a lot going into later. If we go to Andrea, you can see as there's extra money in their family pocket, a lot of it's being allocated to her TFSA, and eventually it goes into his TFSA as well. But what we're doing is we're maxing out the TFSA. So their question to us is, could we gift some money to our kids earlier versus leaving them $2.6 million when we die at 95? Could we start giving money a little bit earlier? So our answer was yes, absolutely. You have that TFSA account. We're continuing to build up the TFSA account. Eventually we have a non-registered account because we've maxed out the TFSA. We can start giving that money. So the next step in this phase would be how much and how often. And I'll save that for another video, but this is really how you need to work through a plan. How do we first optimize the plan? The RSP meltdown and tax strategy typically should not change when you do a lesser drawdown. When you do, I need less money. In this case, again, it was 96, 84, 72. I didn't need the full 107. But the tax planning doesn't change. All it means is I'm drawing out more than I need. Let's reallocate it over to a TFSA account when that's maxed out, non-reg. Now again, if you have a lot of money like John and Andrea, building up a non-registered account, if you get it too big, it may claw back your old age security. It actually could become a bit of a tax issue for you. And that's why the conversation around passing money to the next generation might make sense. Again, this is a great problem to have, but it is a problem a lot of you watching our videos run into. And you need to know how to navigate these waters. So again, hopefully you now understand that even 1.75 million in an RSP, yeah, they have more money than they need, but it's not a tax problem. They're paying an average of about 14 to 15% in tax throughout their retirement. That's a great rate of return. In fact, John's tax rate pre-retirement was 50%. So if you had the mentality of, well, I already have $1.5 million in my RSP, I don't want to put any more in there because I'm not going to have a tax savings. Look, he could have put money in the year before he retired and got 50 cents back on the dollar and pulled it out in retirement and paid 15 cents. That's 35% margin on their money. That's a great rate of return. So never think that there's too much money in your RSP. Typically, that's not the case. And so hopefully you can see that here. So don't give up on RSPs. Keep building up. They're a great tool to have here in Canada. It's really hard to build out a plan where RSPs don't make sense. Like they will make sense unless you're a low income earner. An RSP makes a lot of sense. So again, hopefully this helped give you some direction. If you're in this case, don't settle on that base plan from your financial institution. Make sure you have proper tax planning. Look at timing around your Canadian pension plan and old age security. How do you draw down your registered accounts? How do you create tax efficiency? And if you have more than you're going to spend, how and when do you transfer that to the next generation? So hopefully this was helpful for you, and we'll see you in the next video.